the Businessin Wales Podcast, the business media for Wales. Hello and welcome back to the Businessin Wales Podcast. Now, our guest today came from humble beginnings to become one of the most important people in accountancy in the world. I'm really delighted to say we're joined by Lucy Cohen of Mazuma Money. Lucy, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing?
Oh my God, that was quite the intro. Most important people in accounting in the world. I mean, I'll take it. I'm not sure we can verify that, but okay, I'll take it. I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
I'm a journalist, trust me.
No one's ever said that.
Okay, well, there we are then. Heard it here first, quite literally. No, but genuinely, I mean, you've, as I say, come from very humble beginnings, and I was reading a bit about you before I asked you to come on, and it is just a very impressive story. Do you mind just taking us from the beginning and how Mazuma Money came to be?
Yeah, so we started, so I suppose Mazuma started in a kind of roundabout way. Unsurprisingly, it was never my dream as a child to become an accountant or an entrepreneur. I came from a very creative family, so actors, dancers, musicians. And I'd originally wanted to go into the arts myself. I studied drama for A level. I got a place in Exeter to study drama. And in what is a recurring theme in my life, blagged my way in a gap year into working in film and TV for about 18 months and discovered that I hated it and didn't want to be stood in a wet field in Wales for 11 hours a day, 6 days a week, and just thought, I shouldn't go to university to study this or things related to it because I don't enjoy it. So went to a careers advisor. They opened a book of careers. I presume alphabetically just said accountancy. I was like, yeah, fine. Walked over to the road to what used to be Jury's Hotel in Cardiff. Asked them at reception, have you got any jobs in accounts? I had no idea what I was asking for, not a clue. The financial controller happened to be behind reception at that time, and she said, that's super strange. We've just had our purchase ledger clerk has just left. Can you do purchase ledger? And I was like, yeah, probably. And that was how I got into accountancy. I did my accountancy qualification through an apprenticeship. I then moved to work at Cardiff Council, where I did a big software implementation project on secondment, and I loved that. And that's what kind of gave me that, I think, that bug for change and software and all that kind of stuff. And during that, I'd had the idea for Mazuma. So I had seen the behavior of my family, people who are very talented at what they do, horrible at finance, and how they behave with their accountants, and thought there must be a better way of doing this, and ended up inventing the first subscription service for accountancy in the world. And it grew from my spare bedroom um, up to where it is now, which is a multi-million pound business employing loads of people. And yeah, serving tens of thousands of businesses across the UK.
I mean, when you look back at that interaction in the Jury's Inn, do you ever think, wow, my life could have been so different if that had gone differently, if you hadn't been able to blag your way through it?
Yeah, I'm kind of like I really was flying by the seat of my pants at that point. I was only 20-ish, and I might have even been 19, and didn't really know what I was asking for. And at that age, you don't really have anything to lose, do you? So you can waste a few years in the wrong career, in the wrong job. And I kind of encourage people to do that, actually. Go and figure out not just what you do like, but what you don't like. Like, go and figure out what you hate doing. I hate standing outside in wet fields all day. So any career that involved that was not going to be for me. I instantly got to rule out a bunch of things I didn't want to do. Um, so yeah, I found out what I did like. I really enjoyed accountancy. Not because I'm a particularly gifted mathematician. You don't need to be good at maths to do accountancy. That's a big myth. But you do have to be logic based. You have to like remembering rules. You have to I suppose you have to enjoy building something that paints a picture, and that's what accounts do. That's what finance does. Is it's the numbers, it's the bones, and it tells you a story, and it is a facilitator to allow you to ask the questions. But what I really love is business, and I loved when I worked in Jury's Hotel. I loved all the different aspects of business. I loved seeing sales. I loved the kind of buzz of the month end stuff of the accounts and management accounts production. I loved understanding things like procurement for the kitchen and how all that system worked and how they figured out how much of everything they were going to need for the week. That was all fascinating to me. And so it really kind of ticked a lot of boxes for me. And really that's what I love about business, is it's a way for you to ask the right questions. And at kind of heart, I'm a problem solver. Is I get my jollies from solving problems. I'm great in a crisis because kind of the brain kicks in then, and you ask the right questions and you're able to kind of come up with a solution quite quickly. That's what I love about it, and that's what it gave me. But yeah, I do wonder what I'd be doing now. I trained as a dancer all through my teens, and I had originally obviously wanted to be a dancer, um, and that didn't work out, which is kind of how I went into media and TV, and then that led me into accountancy. So I suppose it's a funny old world. It's funny how these things kind of work out. But I'm a big kind of like, I see it all as a bit of a, as an improv thing. Is I kind of approach things with a yes and concept instead of a no but. And I think if you go into life with that mindset, okay, this problem's in front of me, yes, and now what? Instead of like, oh no, this is going to crush me. It means you're able to kind of talk your way through the most tricky situations, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of the pieces of advice I got with my first boss is says, I like people who bring solutions, not problems. And that
Oh yeah,
always really resonated with me. Is that something
yeah.
that you've come across?
Yeah, don't tell me the light bulb's out. Go and ask me where the light bulbs are to change it. Like that's the concept I always use. Better still, figure out a procurement system so the light bulb never finishes and you never have to bother me with that problem again. Like that's what it is. But yeah, it's always about bringing a solution. Just presenting someone with a problem is lazy, because it means you haven't thought about the next bit, the so what. Oh, we've got a problem with this thing. Well, so what? What are you gonna, you have free will, you have skills and abilities. It's not everyone else's job to solve problems for you. Contribute, put your thinking cap on, at least try. And yeah, and that's what I'm all about.
Oh, brilliant. And you said that it was your family, I presume probably your mum and your dad, and their attitude towards taxes that gave you that idea for Mazuma. So what was that attitude? Can you explain that?
It's just about people being good at their unique abilities. My dad's a musician, so he's a very talented musician. He's a composer. He can produce arrangements for string quartet, and write out all the different scores for it. But tax and money is a different language to him. In the same way that I can do a set of accounts, I can't go and compose something. And they're different skill sets, and they're different things that you're trained in. And I think that for me, it really spoke to, why are we trying to get people? We've got accountants who've trained for often 8 years to do what they do. And then we're trying to get the clients, we're trying to get our clients to do some of that legwork for us. And it's not their skill set, and neither should it be. I don't go to a comedy gig and have to write half the jokes. I don't go to a concert and they expect me to sing instead of the lead singer. It just doesn't make any sense to me that as in accountancy we do that. So I just wanted to solve that problem, and that's kind of what Mazuma did.
Hmm. And you described, or were described, I should say, as a disruptor, an innovator. Hopefully, there's not too much disruption during the podcast. But what
We'll
does that?
see.
We'll see. What does that mean to you?
I think it just means somebody who's not. So there's two things. You can be an agitator and you can be a shock jock, and you can say all the disruptive things and create a big stir. But that's just being difficult. That's not disrupting. Disrupting is actually coming at an industry with a new take and implementing it so that it's the new thing. AI is a big disruptor. ChatGPT was a big disruptor. We were a big disruptor in the accountancy industry because we fundamentally changed the way that accountants deliver service. Back in 2006, when we started, we couldn't even use the term subscription because people didn't know what that meant. Netflix didn't exist. We didn't have Spotify. People weren't used to paying subs for things. So the word subscription meant nothing. We had to say fixed fee service, which is not as sexy. But we had to use those words so that people understood what we were doing. Now, that subscription model is really commonplace. Most accountants who are kind of online in the online world will offer a fixed fee monthly payment subscription service, because it's commonplace. We started that, we disrupted the industry, and now I think the true test of disruption is when it then becomes the disruptor becomes the incumbent, and now it's kind of the incumbent, and that tells me that that was true disruption, because we actually changed the industry.
Because you can see disruption as a cyclical thing, couldn't you? And that the next thing is, you know, accountancy, but not on a subscription basis. Do you have to keep working to the other part of that description was innovator? Do you have to keep
Yeah.
innovating as you go along in order to make sure that the product doesn't become, for lack of a better phrase, you know, pretty stale?
Yeah, you don't know, like, no one wants to be Kodak, do they? Like, that's the thing. Like, you don't want to be the incumbent that didn't see the onset of digital photography or camera phones. Like, that's not what you want to be. So um yeah, it's constantly thinking about innovation. It's thinking about how we can serve the market as well. I hate disruption or change for the sake of change, because it's a waste of everyone's time, and change is hard. um but if there's an opportunity to stay ahead of that curve and it's just product development, keep developing what we do, iterating it, improving it, then that's what I want to keep doing. It doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be another big disruption or another step change, but it does mean that there are small incremental changes in what we do and how we deliver it. And for me, that's exciting. We get into the honing stage. You've got your big lump of wood and you knock all the big blocks off it. And then I think we're in the whittling stage, and we're getting down to where we want to be.
Think food, but make it fierce. Business Boyd blends bold flavours with even bolder business moves. 6 entrepreneurs battle it out for £5,000 and mentorship that could launch their careers. They'll be tested, challenged, and grilled by some of Wales's best business minds. Who will serve up success and who will get burned? Watch it all unfold on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S4C, S4C Click, and BBC iPlayer. So let's talk a little bit more then about the actual accountancy sector. How's it changed since you got into it, the jury's in, to now?
I mean, it's changed and it hasn't changed. So one of the soapboxes I like to stand on is gender equality in accountancy. We have had progress, but it's glacial. Like, women have only been allowed to be accountants for 100 years. So, and the change is glacial, and the change tends to any change in any industry tends to be underpinned by a change in legislation that kind of pushes it through, makes it a requirement, which is why it's so terrifying to see DEI roll back from some of the largest accounting firms in the globe, when we look at the kind of swing of politics we've had and DEI programs getting slashed. Our position as women in accountancy is precarious, because we don't have the support, we don't have the numbers at senior level, which means it makes all humans tend to hire people who look and feel like them. We just don't have that critical mass. So it's going to be very hard to get to gender equality. And we have made progress. I think one of the other obvious call outs about change is technology. When we started Mazuma, we predated cloud technology. So all the stuff we take for granted now, like streaming services, cloud subscriptions to software packages, didn't exist. It was all desktop. It just didn't exist. So we've had to roll with those punches and adapt our service as that technology has opened up more channels to us. And it's that's been a really interesting journey. What hasn't changed is the behavior of small businesses with their accountants, because they all go on the same journey as any business has throughout time. When they start, they struggle for money, they're making sales, they struggle with cash flow. We might be absolutely passionate about our receipt capture software, or for us that we built our own technology platform. I'm super passionate about the very clever technology we've built. I know my clients don't really give a stuff about that, and they neither should they have to. What they care about is that their taxes are done correctly, that things are filed on time, and they've got someone to talk to when they need it. That's what they care about. We can deliver it with the fanciest technology in the world, but fundamentally, if the human element of it isn't there, it's not going to work. So it hasn't changed, regardless of the technological advancements that we go through in these sorts of professional services industries. Humans, their wants, desires, needs, and fears remain the same. And I think that we have to be very cognizant of that as an industry.
Mm. I sort of want to unpack each of those points that you made there one by one. I'll start with the culture shift and DEI. I mean, as a woman in finance, and as you say, it's something that is that progress has been made on. But when you see, for example, major cultural shifts, like, for example, the Supreme Court ruling recently regarding trans people, do you see the rolling back there amongst companies? And we've seen it in sport, for example. Do you see that as a case of, well, these companies weren't actually that committed to these policies in the first place? Or is it perhaps they're just trying to turn with the tide?
I, tricky one to answer, because so I think I need to approach this in two ways. The first is that these policies and this kind of action, we know when you look at a lot of the research, McKinsey and similar companies have done a lot of research about how diversity of socioeconomic background, ethnicity, and gender across a company actually delivers better results to bottom line. Like, it's been studied so many times, and we see that repeated. However, in order to get the top talent in all of those areas, and I'm not saying you shouldn't hire top talent, right? This is, nobody wants to be a tick in a box. And if somebody hired me, I know, and I would back myself, I'm a very competent individual. I'd hope I wasn't just hired because of the gender I identify with. I hope I'm hired because I'm genuinely competent. However, to reach me, you're not going to find me on the golf course. So if your recruitment policy is networking with people at a golf course, I'm not going to be there. And you are therefore limiting the number of people you are able to. And then I hear these companies say things like, oh, but we put a job advert out in the same publication we've been putting an advert out in for the last 30 years, and all these people applied and there were no women. I'm like, well, that's a you problem, because you didn't go and find that talent. You didn't go and you wouldn't do that with your customers, would you? Marketing is both for new business and for employees and for staff and team members. If you weren't getting the right sort of customers, your ICP, from advertising and using, you change your advertising. Blows my mind that people don't think the same thing about recruitment. And it's very easy to not recognize our bias in recruitment. It really is. Some fantastic examples, things like the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, who eventually, when they introduced proper blind auditions, went from an almost 100% male orchestra to what is today 50-50. They started auditioning people behind a screen. So they really couldn't have any bias. And prior to that, they'd always said, yeah, but we're just hiring the best musicians. No one had thought about how much they were influenced by that internal bias. Um, so so there's that. And because of that, these policies take time, to get the shifts to equality is multi-generational. It will take multiple generations to get there, and it takes a concerted effort. It's a long play. And when companies have, and I'm not defending them, when companies have stakeholders and shareholders who are screaming about the bottom line and where their returns are, and they're investing money into programs that they're not going to see a return on for 20, 30 years, maybe even 10 years. I mean, 5 years is a long time in, say, the private equity world. When you have that, it's very hard to make a decision to invest money in something that is not going to give you a return. We do live in a world of instant gratification, and we live in a world of short private equity cycles, and the need for return on investment quickly. So when you then combine that with a political environment that is less supportive of DEI, it's a it's permission. It's a permission, because when you're held under scrutiny for it and you're having to report all those stats, like, well, what's your gender balance and what's your pay gap and all that, when you're legally forced to report that, then it's embarrassing if you're not faring well against your competitors, because regardless of whether it's making you money or not, you don't want to be seen as worse as your closest competitors, right? It's another yardstick. When you then have a political environment that gives you permission, goes, oh, we don't care about it anymore, we've decided unilaterally, not bothered about it, everyone goes, oh, thank goodness, I can stop with all this stuff and I can just focus on kind of power plowing more money into other things. And that's what happens. And that's the first step in a rollback. And then what happens is, if I was going to put my cynical Margaret Atwood hat on, what then happens next is like, oh, we don't care about laws about equality. It's a free market. People, if you're good, people will employ you. And then. So when I talk about on stage, I quite often talk sometimes very very unpopularly, I talk about this stuff. I said on stage at a conference last year, before any of this happened, before we had the political shifts that we've had globally this year, I said on stage around this time last year that our rights and I can only speak from, I'm not qualified to speak from a position of someone of a person of color. You, they undoubtedly, I'm white presenting, undoubtedly that gives me a privilege in certain areas, but as a woman, I can speak from that experience. I said that our rights as women are precarious, and we saw Roe v. Wade get rolled back. It was around that time. I said we need to be cognizant of that and watch that. And I'm going to go back on stage next week and deliver the talk again, where all the figures have rolled back, and now we've had this cancelling of DEI. Now speaking about this, it felt like a warning last time. Now it feels like an act of resistance doing that, because actually we need we can't be passive in this, and we need to fight for it. We've really gone off business chat now. I've really just gone onto a soapbox rant, but yeah, I'm very passionate about this stuff.
Well, no, it is important, isn't it? Because the way that businesses are acting and the way that they perceive, I mean, whether we like it or not, I think it's a fact that businesses have a social responsibility. How they
Yeah,
decide to go about it is a whole separate issue altogether, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, I think the obvious question then is, are you worried about the direction that we are switching in globally?
Oh yeah, like the world's a really depressing place at the moment. And I say this with the privilege of somebody who grew up in the West, and has, compared to other places in the world I've traveled. I not long came back from driving a rickshaw across India for charity. It's we have a soft life, and I'm absolutely not denying a lot of the privilege and comfort that we have here in the West. That said, it doesn't mean we shouldn't strive to be best in class and setting the example for the rest of the world, because that's what people look at. Yeah, I am worried. I think that we already still have a long way to go. And now there's been political permission given, which takes a long time to pull back again. And political permission has been given to not care about this stuff. And it's a slippery slope. And we will then move into a space where you notice a shift in people's language. The people with the kind of more extreme views on this have always existed. The people who say derogatory things or misogynistic things, they've always existed. But now they're emboldened because somebody at the top and somebody in power is saying it. So they're going, oh, actually, I'm allowed to say this too. And then it becomes permissible, then it becomes the culture. And that's where we were, you know, decades, generations ago. It won't take long to get back there, which some people might be delighted about, but I for one am most certainly not. And I am a fairly formidable opponent, and I will fight. I also feel this kind of responsibility. I'm 42 now, and I've been in this game a very long time, and I have seen a lot of positive change, and I've actually been somebody who I hope has been a contributor towards some of this positive change. I'm also, I have the benefit of being older, of being more confident, and of having, fought and got my place in terms of the career and my success. I feel a huge responsibility now to you pass the baton, to place the hand backwards, to pull the next generation along with me. They should be able to go 3 times further, 4 times as fast, because I had to spend so much energy breaking down those doors. They should just be able to run through them, and that's what I want to see. I want to see people going way past what I've ever achieved, because hopefully what I did was open up the space for them to do it. That's progress. People should be, in 5 years' time, you should be interviewing somebody who's done way more than I have, because hopefully what I did was help lay some foundations.
So it's a personal fight, to use your words, for you.
Yeah, hugely so. I'm very I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff, but yeah, it's very personal.
And well, I can tell that you spent a lot of time thinking about it, because that was a really well impassioned speech. Tell me then about the technology changes. I mean, we've already talked a little bit about trying to move along with the general, how do I say, try with the markets, if you will.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
is there always a feeling that there is if you've been at a place for too long, that there needs to be a natural change? You're trying to push against, say, a natural change in the way that you do things with technology.
Yeah, and this is progress. Competition drives innovation very much so in technology. So the fact when we started, we were the only people doing what we did in this space. And it's actually really hard to do this and not have any competitors to rub up against because you've got no basis for comparison. You couldn't say things like, "Oh, we're like Netflix but for accountants," because it didn't exist. So it was very hard to explain what we did. In a lot of scenarios, it's actually very beneficial to have a competitor, and it's the rising tide lifts all ships, or when you have a athlete in a race that consistently runs faster than everyone else, the performances of everyone else in that race increase as well. We work well when we've got somebody who's a pace setter. And technology works like that. You get ages with nothing, and suddenly a load of very similar products will come out at once, and suddenly chat GPT is a really obvious example. Your GPTs are everywhere. Big breakthrough, loads of simultaneous, lots of other little breakthroughs, and then leapfrogs and driving forward. And it's kind of like it sort of builds up, like it's kind of like this big push. And I've seen that loads of times over my career. We had the switch from desktop to cloud, and then we've got cloud into AI, and we've got you know, all kinds of stuff which is contributing to this technological shift. And what's interesting is at every stage, everybody goes, "Oh no, but it's going to get rid of humans." No, it's not. It's just going to make our lives easier. Email didn't get rid of the postal service, did it? We just use it differently. Like we're just going to adapt because humans are ultimately very adaptable. We've been around for quite a long time as a species. We're pretty adaptable. We'll just roll with those punches and we'll make a world where we work with technology and it's a tool and it's an enabler. Um, and I think that the trick when you run a business is knowing what technology is going to serve you well and which technology you just don't need. There really is, I think, in a lot of business, we see silver bullet syndrome. So people look at, oh, we are served ads after algorithm after algorithm, showing us the next silver bullet that's going to change our lives. If I mention any brand names here, I can guarantee you I will see them on my TikTok feed later. So I'm not going to, but we see a lot of kind of business development or business assistance apps that claim to be the next thing, and it's really easy as business to buy into all of those things, take the subscription for all of them, you not implement the change, and then write off that bit of technology. I think as business owners, what we have to be very um, intentional about is why we're choosing a solution and how we're going to implement it. And then finally, how we test and measure it against what the previous solution was and what time period, what's our kind of investment appraisal period, like how long do we give it before we decide if it's working or not and what the improvement's supposed to be. That's the bit that people do badly. And that's the bit that technology never reminds you need to do, because regardless of what fancy technology you implement, it's humans implementing it. So you have to then continue to work with humans, their behaviors, their little nuances and quirks to get them to buy in the technology, to then use it as a tool to advance stuff. But that's the fun bit. That's the change management bit that I love. That's the tricky bit. That's the bit where regularly I'm like, oh God, why can't people just do what I say? Why have they got to question everything? But then you see people slowly buy into the change. You learn how to get that messaging right, and then you see the delight on their little faces when it does work and improve their lives. You're like, yeah, that's what we did it for. That's why we do this.
Well, here's the tricky question then. I mean, what does the accountant of the future look like? Is it a case of typing a bunch of numbers and patterns into instead of perhaps a spreadsheet, but into some sort of AI algorithm, and then bang, getting your tax returns back?
I think we're going to. So I can sit here with I'm also vice president and president elect of AAT, which is one of the UK accounting bodies. So I can sit here with my hat on there in terms of kind of representing a membership of tens of thousands. I think we've got 70,000 members across the UK and beyond. And I think about this a lot. What is the future of the profession with AI? How do we make sure our qualifications and our professional membership is still relevant in a world that is changing like this? And what does the future accountant look like? I think what we're going to do is reassess what the value is in an accountant. Accountancy has gone from being, for all your accounting nerds out there, has gone from being manual ledgers in T accounts. We dial back before that. I used to have a calculator which used to print out like something when I did it. That's how old I am. When I first started doing payroll for a company, I used to like do all my adding up and print that. I used to have to staple that to the payroll report to prove my workings. We've gone from that to a automated payroll software, which is in the cloud. We've and so my value is different. My value is no longer spent doing those menial tasks. Those can be picked up by something that isn't human. My value in that scenario is analyzing, is providing added value, is giving better service to small businesses or to clients or customers. So what technology will do is it will allow a lot of more automated, accurate data collection. Because let's face it, humans inputting data into anything has a huge error rate. You know, if you work with any systems like Six Sigma, you know how high a human error rate is when you compare that to kind of manufacturing error rates and things like Six Sigma. So human error rate's naturally very high. And yet we seem to have this thing where we trust a human inputting something more than we trust a computer picking up information. It's a really strange mindset. Um, but we'll start trusting that technology more, and we'll start just taking that as read, because we know the error rate on it will be so low that any errors will be immaterial, and we'll have checks and balances. So will just spend more time developing those systems. And then the value of the account is going to be not inputting and moving data around. It's going to be interpreting and turning data into a real story, turning accounts, right back to what I said at the top of the show here, turning accounts into the story of the business. Accountants will have more time to do that, which only improves their service, which will then in turn improve what advice can be given to small businesses, and is overall kind of beneficial for the economy. Small businesses getting better, more relevant, plain English advice. Ultimately, as an accountant, that's what you want, is to help your clients and customers. If you've got more time to do that, then fantastic. Bring in the robot overlords.
Business Boyd is where food meets fire, but only the strongest will survive the heat. 6 ambitious food innovators battle it out for £5,000 and invaluable mentorship. Tasks get tougher as some of Wales's best business minds put them through their paces. Who will take the crown and who will fold under pressure? Watch the action every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on S4C, S4C Click, and BBC iPlayer. Wonderful. I mean, I also really wanted, just before we leave this, and it's been great to chat with you, Lucy. But just before I do leave you, I've got to ask about powerlifting.
Oh yeah.
That seems like the natural closer for this. So
Yeah.
how do you get into a sport like this? Not that I'm anytime soon going to be lifting heavy weights.
So I got into it, like a lot of women who grew up in the kind of 90s and early 2000s. I was bombarded with that kind of, very skinny, heroin chic kind of look, and was, absorbed the message that my body was only worth something if it was, in inverted commas, nice to look at, or met the kind of societal definition of what attractive was. And as I grew up, I didn't like that. I wanted my body to be useful. I said I used to dance when I was younger. I've always been I enjoy learning anything that's got a physical skill attached to it. So, ice skating, gymnastics, dancing, anything that has a skill attached to it is kind of my thing. I'm not a team player. Don't put me in a team sports, not for me. But anything that I can kind of find an individual skill set, great. I started seeing a personal trainer to work on getting stronger. I wanted my body to be strong. And it turned out I was just kind of freakishly strong. So he said, well, you should train. It's good to train for something, train for a half marathon, train for whatever. I'm not a runner. I'm never going to run on purpose. Not a thing for me, but train for an event. So we found a local powerlifting meet. I went and competed in it and did really well. And somebody from British powerlifting was there and said, you should think about doing this more seriously. I was like, never want to do anything by half. I was like, yeah, all right, cool. Let's do that. Long story short, then I trained. I represented Wales many times on the Welsh team. I was on the British powerlifting team, and I was a Commonwealth powerlifting silver medalist in 2015. And British champion in 2016. So it's an incredibly empowering thing to do as a woman, to be strong enough to move furniture on your own and not need anybody. But also, on a serious note, it very much protects you from osteoporosis. So it's very, very useful. If you want to get into it now, the adoption of powerlifting, I now help run Welsh powerlifting. I don't compete anymore, but I help run Welsh powerlifting. I've been on that committee for over 10 years now. And I've seen the engagement in the sport increase year on year on year. And we now have hundreds of members across Wales who compete at local level, national level, international level, all ages from sub juniors, 14-year-olds, all the way up to masters lifters. We've got lifters who compete into their late 70s and even into their 80s.
Wow.
It's a really diverse, accepting, empowering sport, and it's a fantastic community. If you wanted to get into powerlifting, just you can hit up the Welsh Powerlifting Instagram or the Wales Powerlifting website. You'll find us online. Speak to one of the committee members. But loads of gyms offer powerlifting now, and there are loads of most universities have powerlifting clubs. Yeah, it's a fantastic sport to be a part of. And my husband's actually the director in Wales. That's how we met. It's through powerlifting. We're on the Welsh team together
Oh, amazing.
in 2015. So bag yourself a life partner as well. Great place, beats Tinder. How we met. And so we help run the sport in Wales, and all the powerlifters actually call us mum and dad. So we're like the mum and dad of powerlifting, which is very sweet.
Oh, that is really sweet, actually. Yeah.
Quite cute, yeah.
Do you think that that's helped you in business in any way? I mean, whether it's the discipline, whether it's working towards a goal?
Oh yeah, so powerlifting's really humbling, and one of the reasons that I really wanted to do it or compete in it, I suppose, is I'm an articulate person. I back myself in any room to be able to at least express my opinion properly and feel like I've given a good account of myself. You can't do that on a powerlifting platform. You can't talk your way into or out of a lift. You can't miss the lift and we weren't strong enough to lift and go, actually, do you know what? I think if you really look at the data, you'll probably decide that I was strong enough. You just didn't see it correctly. It does none of that. You can't do that. It's a yes or a no. You lifted it or you didn't. And that is so far out of my comfort zone. Like, I was a very nervous lifter competitively. I was a nervous wreck. And because of that, it hugely pushed me out of my comfort zone. And so therefore was a really good thing for me to do. It's very humbling. Nobody in powerlifting cares how successful you are as a business person. They just care about what you can squat, bench, and deadlift. That is the only numbers that matter to them. It's not your EBITDA or your turnover. It's your squat, bench, and deadlift. That's what they care about. And so therefore it's kind of a different leveler. It's sort of a democratization, which is really interesting. And yeah, it's anything like that. It doesn't have to be powerlifting. I think any sport or anything that forces you to have a bad day and get back up and do it again is worth doing, because it teaches you. I said earlier on that we have a very soft life here. We are not day to day earning money to put food on the table that night, and then tomorrow is an unknown. Most people, and we do obviously have significant poverty issues in the UK, but most people are not living in a world where they're earning money for the day, which buys today's food, and they have to do it all again tomorrow. We're working in monthly, quarterly, annual financial cycles, not hour to hour, day to day cycles, which in a lot of parts of the world they are. And so therefore, day to day life is about survival. We kind of don't have that over here. So we don't really have all those experiences we don't have that much exposure. The word resilience is bandied around a lot. We don't have much exposure to building resilience. There's not that much real opportunity to do it. So we synthesize it through sports and through corporate away days or any of that kind of stuff. But sports, individual sport in particular, I think is a really good way to do it, because you're going to have bad days. Some days your body just doesn't do what you want it to do, and some days you're just randomly stronger than others. And you can try and analyze all the, but it's because of this hormone level, or I had this many calories, or I had this many hours deep sleep, or whatever. Or you can stand up and go, I'm just going to get on with the next day, and I'm not going to obsess over that, and I'm going to just get on it and try again tomorrow. And I think that's a huge lesson in resilience, and also in doing things when you don't feel like doing it. Because a lot of training, anyone who's ever done a endurance event or trained for anything really, that motivation doesn't get you anywhere. It's habit that gets you there, and you have to do stuff on days when you don't feel like doing it. That's it. And you still train and you'll still do it, and you maybe don't enjoy it as much as you do, but you just have to get through it. That is 90% of business. Just doing stuff that you have to do and you don't necessarily enjoy, but you're doing it because that end result is worth it. that is, I think I say that's 90% of life, isn't it? Really, you just have to take the wins where they are. Like,
Yeah, doing the things that you want to do means that you have to do the things that you need to do, kind of thing.
100%. I wish I got to do whatever I fancied and whatever whim or whimsy popped into my head every day. But unfortunately, we live in a world where money's the barter system. I've got to earn it to pay my mortgage. So I have to make choices.
Amazing. Well, Lucy, I like to end these episodes by asking if there was one piece of advice that you could give to your younger self, then what would it be?
Oh, such a good question. And I've been asked this a few times before these, and I don't think I've ever given a consistent answer to this. Um, I think I'd say to them that you are more capable than you ever thought you were, and just to not doubt yourself. Because despite the fact I'm sat here being fairly confident now, I'm a I'm an anxiety sufferer and I doubt myself daily. Is to learn not to doubt yourself. Because actually, you know, you're doing all right, kid. You're gonna be fine. Just keep going. That's it. Just keep going.
Oh, lovely. Well, that's a great way to end it, I think, Lucy. If you didn't feel like you lived up to the intro that I gave you, I think by now you probably feel like you do.
I don't know. Maybe I'll let other people be the judge of that. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
me who judges that.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on to the Business in Wales podcast, and hopefully you can come back soon. The Business in Wales podcast, the business media for Wales.